I used to pray for times like this, to rhyme like this, so I had to grind like that, and shine like this, and the matter of time I spent on some locked up shit.
What a crowd.
Paddy wagon, cuffs locked on wrist. See my dreams unfold.
Good evening, Pittsburgh. My name is Nolan Cambridge. You can't hear me? How about now? How about now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Hello? All right. My name is Nolan Cambridge, and I'm an organizer in our Castle Shannon office right here in Allegheny County. That's better. I'm a first-generation American citizen and a first-generation and recent graduate from the University of Pittsburgh. And I could not be more proud to be working to There is only one candidate in this race who will do just that, and her name is Kamala Harris. She's going to chart a new way forward for all families like the one I grew up in, and families all across Pennsylvania and our country who dare to get ahead and live out their dreams right here in America, the land of opportunity. I'm on the ground every day talking to voters, whether it be on the phones or at the doors. And it has been nothing short of incredible to see how fired up people are to elect Vice President Harris and Governor Walz this November. People from all walks of life are joining our campaign to make sure everyone knows about the clear choice in this race and gets out to vote. But, as the Vice President says, we've got work to do, and we can't take anything for granted. With 26 days left, I hope everyone here today will join us on this home stretch. Find an organizer with a clipboard and sign up. They don't bite. Join us to knock on doors, and make sure your neighbors know about how Vice President Harris plans to grow the middle class. Join us to call up voters and make sure they know about how Project 2025 would rip away their freedoms. Join us in talking to all our friends and family members and that they have a plan to vote. Finally, join us at the ballot box to make sure we win Pennsylvania and elect Vice President Harris and Governor Walz. Go to iwillvote.com to make a plan to vote early. You can cast your ballot this week. I already have. There is no time to waste. So let's get out there and win this thing. Because when we fight, we win! Thank you very much.
Please welcome to the stage, Pittsburgh Mayor Ed Gainey.
Can you hear me out there? I don't know if they heard me. Let's try this again, Todd. Pittsburgh! Yeah, it's great to be with all of you. It's great to be here today on such a significant moment. We are in the Steel City, and I want to welcome President Barack Obama back. I'm going to say to his favorite city. Listen, Election Day is less than a month away, and there is so much at stake in this election. And as Pennsylvanians cast our ballot, we're voting not just for a candidate, but to choose between two vastly different visions for our future. We're voting to decide what kind of opportunity our children will have. And we need to make sure that we give our children the best opportunity. We're voting on our freedoms and to make sure that our Constitution is kept and protected and not destroyed. The choice we make in this election will be the difference of a future of freedom. A future of freedom. Or a return to the past. Because of a second Trump term, we know that would mean unprecedented attacks on our Constitution, on Pittsburgh families' ability to be able to thrive. And we need to make sure that we vote to protect our freedom. Here in Pennsylvania, we have not forgotten how Trump failed us, how he failed us, losing over 275,000 Pennsylvania jobs, including shipping 15,000 overseas. And of course, overturning Roe versus Wade. In 2020, we let Trump know we wanted nothing to do with his extreme agenda. We don't want nothing to do with his extreme agenda. And right here in Pennsylvania, we gave him the Steel City boot that he can't come up in here. In 2024, we will do it again. We will turn the page. We will go to the polls in record numbers, never seen before. We will make sure that Donald Trump never sees the inside of the Oval Office again. We remember quite too well. Yeah, I like that, I like that, I like that. We remember what the first term Trump's presidency felt like. You remember how you felt. I remember how I felt. And we know that a Trump second term will be much, much worse than the first term. How do we know? He's told us. He's told us, he's laid out exactly what he would do in his plan. It's called Project 2025. That's right. A blueprint of extreme policies Trump will enact if elected. That's why we got to make sure it don't happen. Trump's Project 2025 agenda will give Trump virtually unchecked power to do whatever he wants to do. He will ban abortion nationwide. That means right here in Pennsylvania. And he will jack up the cost for middle and working class families by nearly $4,000 a year. Think about that. While lining his own pockets in the pockets of his billionaire donors. We can't afford that. The people of Pennsylvania, we will make our voices heard. We are never going back. Pennsylvania wants nothing to do with Trump or this Project 2025 agenda. It's time that we send a message. It's time that we send a message. We need to defeat Donald Trump in his extreme agenda. And that's why each one of y'all gotta go tell 50 people when we leave here, vote for Vice President Harris in this upcoming election. Our beloved city, Pittsburgh, we got 26 days left. So let's make every day count. So let's go out and get this vote. You can vote right now. You can vote early, and you can vote in person in Allegheny County. And let's get out there and talk to our family. Let's talk to our friends, our neighbors. Let's knock on them doors. Let's call up our neighbors and make sure that everyone knows what is at stake in these elections. We know what's at stake. This is the reality. We can't put anger back in the White House. Anger is one letter removed from danger. And if we don't get out and get the vote, we can't send a message to Donald Trump that we will never put anger or danger back into the White House. God bless you. God bless America. God bless Pennsylvania. Let's go get it.
Please welcome to the stage Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania, Austin Davis.
Organizing in my community to take on gun violence in my hometown of McKeesport. I was inspired by President Obama and his message of hope and change. Today, there's a whole generation of elected officials who went into politics because Barack Obama told us, yes, we can. A whole generation that was fired up and ready to go. I'm proud to be Pennsylvania's first black lieutenant governor. And the youngest lieutenant governor in America. But while it's great to be first, it's even more important not to be last. There are still so many barriers we need to break. As a new dad, I can't wait for my daughter Harper when she can look up at the person in the Oval Office and see herself represented in the President of the United States. So that she can be inspired in the same way that I was. So she knows that that yes, we can. That she can be fired up and ready to go, and that she believes that when we fight, we win. I stand before you as the proud son of a union bus driver and a hairdresser. I grew up in a working class family and in a working class community. I learned the values of hard work and respect for everyone, whether they work in an office or on a construction site, or whether they shower in the morning or when they get home from work. And so did Vice President Harris. She grew up in a middle-class community. Her mother worked hard to provide for their family. Kamala Harris understands that when the middle class is strong, America is strong. That's why building up the middle class will be the defining goal of her presidency. She's offering a new way forward for our country to protect our fundamental rights and freedoms and to ensure that every American has the opportunity not just to get by, but to get ahead and to create generational wealth for their families. Vice President Harris is going to lower costs for essentials like groceries, take on corporate price gouging, give more than 100 million working and middle-class Americans a tax cut, and invest in our small businesses, help people afford housing, and so much more. Because Vice President Harris and Governor Walz's guiding principle is simple: what will make life better for working families? Donald Trump, on the other hand, has one and only guiding principle: himself. Remember, this guy was born on third base. He doesn't know what a working class family looks like. When I think about the kind of future I want for my daughter, the choice in this election could not be clearer. While the Vice President fights for us, for a better future for our country, Trump is vowing to take us backwards. But here in Pittsburgh, we have the power to choose the kind of future we want for ourselves and for our children. And there is no time like the present time to make that choice heard. Because voting has started and we've got a few weeks left to make our voices heard. So vote early, vote loudly, knock on every last door, call every last undecided voter. In Pittsburgh, let's make history and elect Kamala Harris as our next president. Let's go to work.
Please welcome to the stage Governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro.
In progress here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Now listen, I think you all know this. We focus our work around 3 simple letters in the alphabet, and that is G, We focus on getting stuff done for the good people of Pennsylvania. And I'll tell you what, Pittsburgh, working together, we have been able to make the largest investment in public education in the history of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. That's right. Our kids today are learning on full bellies because we have delivered universal free breakfast for all God's children in Pennsylvania. We're investing in our schools, and we're investing to make sure those kids can walk to and from school safer and free of gun violence, investing more in public safety than ever before. And hear me on this, while we invest in public safety, we have also managed to bring people together to pass the most significant criminal justice reforms in the history of our Commonwealth. You can do both. You can have a just system and a safe system at the same time. We've cut taxes for small businesses and families and our seniors, and we've also made crystal clear that here in Pennsylvania, no matter what path you choose, we're going to respect you. Whether you choose to go to the military, whether you choose to go to work in a union hall, or whether you choose to go work in college, all pathways to success are to be respected. That's why we did away. That's why we did away with the college degree requirement for 92% of state government jobs, opening up the doors of opportunity to more Pennsylvanians. We believe in getting stuff done in Pennsylvania. Now, I know we're here at the Fitzgerald Fieldhouse. This is where team sports are played. And I'm a big sports guy, and I'll tell you what, politics is a team sport. In order for us to get anything done, we got to find ways to bring people together. And we got to have strong partnerships in progress. I'll tell you someone who is a great partner to me, someone who's getting stuff done for Pennsylvania, our senior senator, United States Senator Bob Casey. Are you going to re-elect Bob Casey? Thanks to Bob Casey and our guest tonight, Barack Obama, we've got the Affordable Care Act in this country. Thanks to Bob Casey, veterans are being taken care of in this country. Our infrastructure is being rebuilt, from repairing our lead pipelines in Esplin to getting that Fern Hollow Bridge rebuilt quickly. Bob Casey stands up for us, whether it's making sure our seniors can get insulin at $35 or making sure our kids have access to quality child care. Bob Casey is there for us. We got to return Bob Casey to the U.S. Senate. Politics is a team sport, and I'll tell you what, we have had great teammates in Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Are you ready to send Kamala Harris to the White House? Let me tell you, I've known Kamala Harris for 20 years. She's tough as nails. She's a dedicated prosecutor. She is dedicated to being for the people. She is battle-tested. She is ready to go. She is prepared to lead, and she's going to be the 47th President of the United States. Now, Pennsylvania, much like the Senate race, you could not have a clear contrast between Kamala Harris and that guy she's running against, right? Now, I know there's still a few folks, even though we got about 3 weeks to go, there's still a few folks with a little bit of brain fog. They don't remember what it was like when he had the keys to the White House for those 4 years. So let me remind you, let's play a little catch up. Under Donald Trump, we had more chaos, less jobs, and a whole lot less freedom in this nation. We are not going back. We're not going back. We're not going back, right? We're not going back. We're not. We're not. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to that time of division. I don't want to go back to that time where he tried to pit one person against another. I want to live in a country where no matter what you look like, where you come from, who you love or who you pray to, you are respected and belong here in this country. That's what I want. That's what Kamala Harris wants. I don't want more division. And I'll tell you what else I don't want. I don't want all this negativity. I'm sick and tired of it. I'm sick of it. The dude's a whiner, right? As we'd say to our kids as they were growing up, don't be a whiny pants, right? And listen, this is not the time to whine, America. I want you to think about this. In America today, we are producing more energy than ever before. That is good for our economy and great for our national security. In America today, we are beating China economically for the first time in economic generations. This morning in America, more people went to work than ever before. So I got a message to Donald Trump. Stop shit-talking America. Stop it. Cut it out. Cut it out. No. Cut it out. Because hear me on this. This is the greatest country on earth. He better damn well start acting like it. In this country, we value our freedom. We cherish our democracy, and we love this country. And yet this guy wants to lead our nation, and he's so unfit to lead. He's so unfit to lead. But we have a leader in Kamala Harris, someone who's compassionate, someone who gives a damn, someone who wants to lift us up. And Pennsylvania, right now it's on us to lift her up. Now, I've been talking a whole lot about Bob Casey and Kamala Harris. I want to close by talking about all of you, my fellow Pennsylvanians. Kamala Harris and Bob Casey's names may be on the ballot, but here's the thing. It's your rights. It's your futures that are on the line. And here in Pennsylvania, you have awesome power to shape our future, to think about the kind of place you want your kids and your grandkids to grow up in. And hear me on this, you don't just have this power because you know, we're the swingiest of all swing states, you know, politically speaking, of course. Right? Right? You don't just have this power because we're a swing state. You have this power because our ancestors gave it to you. And their ancestors gave it to them. And those who came before us handed down to us this mantle of responsibility. And it was born here in Pennsylvania, that sense of responsibility, and it started here not a year ago, not 10 years ago, not 100 years ago, but 248 years ago. You see, 248 years ago, just down the road in Philly, a band of patriots came together to declare our independence from a king. And let me tell you something. I don't care what the Supreme Court says. We're not going back to a king in this country. We are not. But we're not going back. We declare our independence from a king. And then our ancestors and theirs and those who came before us, some of them, took up arms, secured a nation, and then gathered again in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in Independence Hall. They came together to write a document. Hear me on this. An imperfect document. A document that didn't include all of us, but a document, importantly, that set us on a path of self-determination. That said, in this nation, we could define our future. We could be the determiners of our destiny. That is what the Constitution said. After that band of patriots signed that Constitution in Philadelphia, one of my predecessors, sounds crazy to say, Ben Franklin, former leader of Pennsylvania. I know, it's crazy to say, right? Ben Franklin signed the Constitution. And he walked out onto those cobblestone streets of Philadelphia. He was met by a woman. She looked him in the eye and she said, "Mr. Franklin, what do we have here? A monarchy or a republic?" Franklin looked her in the eye and he said, "We have a republic if you can keep it." Those 5 words, "if you can keep it," that's what's defined America over the last 2.5 centuries. That is what has called ordinary Americans to rise up, to demand more, to seek justice, and to try and build a future that was more tolerant, more equal, and more free. A future that after 2.5 centuries would come to include all of us, would come to bring all of us to the table, would come to perfect our union, even though it is still imperfect and that work in progress. Pennsylvania, we have a responsibility to continue this work. We have a responsibility to heed the words of Franklin, "If you can keep it," and do this work right now. In a few weeks, you're going to grab a pen. Some of you may have done this already, and filled out your ballots. And I ask you, when you're filling out your ballots, and make sure you fill out that circle real well. Stay in the lines. I ask you to think about that pen you're using, blue or black ink. And I ask you to think about whether or not you're just voting for a person, but rather writing this next chapter in our American story. Right? A chapter that we haven't finished yet. You see, the beauty of America has been, as we have written these chapters, we have always ended up better and stronger and more tolerant. And right now, we've taken a few steps forward in this chapter, but we've also been knocked back a step. Because my daughter and daughters out there all across America today live with fewer rights than they had the day they were born. We are not finished doing our work. We're going to restore Roe under Kamala Harris and protect our rights and freedoms. We're going to build a more tolerant nation. We are going to build a more just society. We are going to fill in that circle for Kamala Harris and Bob Casey, and we are together going to write this next chapter in our American story. Pennsylvania, it is on your shoulders. Are you ready to build a more perfect, a more just, a more free society? I know I'm ready for it. I know you're ready for it. Let's get to work, Pennsylvania. I love you guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
so much. I love you. Thank you.
Welcome to the stage, local educator Shakila.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? No? Better? Good evening, Pittsburgh. My name is Shakila Paye, and I'm extremely honored to be here today to help welcome President Obama back to our city. I have been lucky to call Pennsylvania my home my entire life. I grew up in Johnstown, PA, and moved to Pittsburgh as an adult, and I now proudly claim it as my home. I am here on the stage today because so much is on the line in this election. The stakes could not be higher, and right here in Pittsburgh, we are going to decide what kind of future we want for ourselves. Donald Trump wants to take us backwards. Trump, at all. Trump and his Project 2025 agenda would take us into the past, rip away more of our fundamental freedoms, and raise costs for families like yours and mine. Vice President Harris has a very different vision for the future. She wants to take us forward. Listen, I spend a lot of time with the future as a kindergarten teacher at the Urban Academy Charter School of Greater Pittsburgh. I spend every day with a bunch of youngins, and when I think about what kind of world I want my students to grow up in, I think of the future Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Tim Walz are fighting to build. I think about a future where every single one of my students can make a good life for themselves and get ahead. I want them to be able to get a good education, one day buying a home, and not worrying every night about how they'll pay their bills or buy food for their families. I think of how the little girls I teach deserve to be able to control their own bodies without the government interfering with their decision about when or if they want to start a family. And that's the future that Vice President Harris is fighting for. That's what's at stake in this election. I'll be honest, for a while politics have felt distant to me. I voted for President Obama in 2008 as a first-time voter, and then again in 2012. If anyone is wondering whether your vote matters, whether your voice matters, let me be very clear, they absolutely do. Just a few votes at every polling place this year could make the difference between Donald Trump forcing his Project 2025 agenda upon us and Vice President Harris taking the oath of office in January and fighting for each and every one of us here. That's why I decided to get off the sidelines this year, and on Tuesday, I reviewed my voter registration. If you haven't checked your voter registration, please do it today. You have until October 21st to register to vote, and then get out to cast your ballot on Election Day. I am excited to start my voter process again, casting my ballot for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. President Obama has told us, all of us, that we have the power to decide our country's future, and I am going to do just that. We need to create the kind of change we want to see in this country, and we are going to do that by electing Vice President Harris and Democrats up and down the ballot. It is now my incredible honor to introduce Senator Bob Casey, who has
It's been a long I got one question for this crowd. Are you ready to win? Are you ready to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz? And are you ready to help me win this United States Senate seat? All right. Now, isn't it great to have President Barack Obama with us tonight? I'm going to introduce him in a moment, but I got a couple things I want to say first. But we're so grateful you're here tonight. You're here tonight because you love our country. That's why you're here tonight. And I can't thank you enough for loving your country enough to be here with us tonight. This is a fight this year about a lot of key issues for families. But I think at the core of this campaign, at the national level and here in Pennsylvania, it's a fight really about two things. The first is rights. The fight for voting rights, women's rights, workers' rights, all on the line. But this is also a fight about working families, about working together to help our working families to lower costs, to fight the fentanyl crisis, and to take care of the most vulnerable among us. Our kids, our seniors, people with disabilities, help our veterans. That's what we do as Democrats. Now, I got something to say about my opponent, just a couple things. My opponent is a former hedge fund CEO. And he told some lies in this campaign. He lied about living in Pennsylvania when he was living in Connecticut. He lied about how he grew up. He said he came from nothing. That's what he said. He had a pretty good upbringing like I did. We were lucky to have strong families and to grow up with a lot of advantages. He should tell a different story about that. He also lied about creating jobs in Pennsylvania. When he outsourced jobs from Pennsylvania to India and China. He shouldn't lie about that. He also lied. Well, we just get past that. But you know, this is a candidate who didn't vote in Pennsylvania for 15 years. While we were here in Pennsylvania working for the people, working all together like we all were, he was somewhere else. He was up in Connecticut. And you know what he was doing when he was in Connecticut as the hedge fund CEO? He was investing in China, not in Pennsylvania. Hear me out on this. He increased investments in China by 108,000% when he was the CEO. He invested in a company in China that made 90% of the fentanyl. He invested in Chinese oil companies and steel companies. He invested in China's companies making bombers and missiles to help China's military. Now, when he did all that, he was hurting our country and hurting the people of Pennsylvania. That's what he was doing. Boo was right. And you know what he also bet against? When he was making investments, he bet against American steel companies, not betting for American steel companies. I want you to know, he's got some plans if he were to be successful. Here's one of his big plans. His plan is to give big tax breaks for, you guessed it, the billionaires, the people making a lot of money, and the biggest corporations in the world. You know what happens when they do that? They'll put Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security on the chopping block. We're not going to do that in America. We're not going to cut those programs to give billionaires a tax cut. Now, these out-of-state billionaires know that I won't vote for their tax cuts. I've already proven that. I voted against the billionaire tax cuts of 2017. So they're a little mad at me now. They're mad at me that I'm going after them on corporate greed as well. They're pretty damn mad about that. You know what they're doing? They're spending more than $100 million to defeat me in this race. Well, I got news for those billionaires. I'm going to beat David McCormick, and I'm going to beat those billionaires. I need you to help me. I need you to help me. Go to bobcasey.com and help us to fight off those billionaires. And we're grateful you're here tonight, because tonight we're here to focus on the future of our Commonwealth and our country. And tonight as well, we're honored tonight to welcome back to the city of Pittsburgh someone who's been here a lot, who campaigned here when he ran for president the first time, the second time, and helping candidates after that. You remember what he did. There's a lot we could list here, but I'll just make it very brief. You know what he did to lead our country in passing the Affordable Care Act, right? And I not only voted for that legislation, I fought off all the attempts to gut it and to repeal it. But that bill, here's what that bill meant to the people of Pennsylvania. There are 1.4 million Pennsylvanians who have health care solely because of the Affordable Care Act. And we know that so many Pennsylvanians, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them, have coverage for pre-existing conditions because of that Affordable Care Act. So tonight, as we come here tonight to talk about winning these campaigns for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz all the way down the ballot, we're also here to welcome back to Pittsburgh and to thank him for his work for delivering for the people of Pennsylvania when he was president, the 44th president of the United States, Barack Obama.
Are you fired up? Are you ready to go? It is good. It is good to be back in Pennsylvania. It is good to be back in Pittsburgh. I love Pittsburgh. You know, I love the people of Pittsburgh. I love the food in Pittsburgh. I don't usually do this, but this is a little bit of a Yelp rating. Just had some of Pamela's pancakes. I first had those like 10, 15 years ago when I was running. And I was all like, I need some of those pancakes this time out. And even though I'm from Chicago, some of you may know, when I was a kid, I was a Steelers fan. And watching the Steelers this season, it seems I'm not the only guy from Chicago who likes being in Pittsburgh, because so far Justin Fields is doing pretty good. Now, before we get started, we have a little bit of work to do here. All right, so I want everybody to be, just settle in. We got some work to do. Before we get started, I did want to say that we are, heartbroken about the loss of life in Florida, North Carolina, states across the Southwest. We are thinking about people, families whose lives have been upended by the storms over the last couple of weeks. I could not be more grateful for the first responders and FEMA professionals who have put themselves in harm's way to try and help. You know, it's times like this when you realize having honest, competent leadership in government really matters. It makes a difference. And today I'm asking you to vote for some of those leaders, including some folks we need working with your outstanding governor, who you just heard from, Governor Josh Shapiro. We need them in Harrisburg. So we need you to vote for your next Auditor General, Malcolm Kenyatta. Your next Attorney General, Eugene DePascale. Your next State Treasurer, Eric McClellan. And my buddy, your outstanding United States Senator Bob Casey. Now here in Pennsylvania, there are 3 ways to vote. You can vote early, in person, at the county election office, or at a satellite office. You can also vote by mail. And if you need to figure out how to do that, just go to iwillvote.com/PA to find a place to vote early or to request a ballot. And of course, you can vote at your polling place on Election Day, November 5th. But if you're at this rally, let's face it, you're probably voting unless you are 12. So you also have to help your friends and family make a plan to vote. And even if you're 12, you can do that. Talk to your mom and dad and aunts and uncles, because together we have a chance to choose a new generation of leadership in this country and start building a better and stronger and fairer and more hopeful America. Now, you've already heard tonight, this election is going to be tight, because there are a lot of Americans who are still struggling out there. They're still striving to make life better for themselves, for their families, and for their kids. And let's face it, as a country, we've been through a lot these last few years. We had a historic pandemic wreaking havoc on communities and businesses. Disruptions from the pandemic then caused prices to spike, and that put a strain on family budgets. And in many ways, it's felt like the aspirations of working people have taken a back seat to the priorities of the rich and the powerful. So I get it, why people are looking to shake things up. I mean, I am the hopey-changey guy. So I understand people feeling frustrated and feeling we can do better. What I cannot understand is why anybody would think that Donald Trump will shake things up in a way that is good for you, Pennsylvania. I don't understand that. Because there is absolutely no evidence that this man thinks about anybody but himself. I've said it before. Donald Trump is a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down his golden escalator 9 years ago. You've got the tweets in all caps, the ranting and the raving about crazy conspiracy theories. You got the 2-hour speeches, word salad, just, you know, it's like Fidel Castro, just on and on. Constant attempts to sell you stuff. Who does that? Selling you gold sneakers and a $100,000 watch and most recently a Trump Bible. You know, he wants you to buy the Word of God, Donald Trump edition, got his name right there next to Matthew and Luke. I mean, you could not make this stuff up. If you saw it on Saturday Night Live, you'd say, well, no, that's going too far. No, he's doing that. It's crazy. And the reason he does it is because all he cares about is his ego and his money and his status. He's not thinking about you. Donald Trump sees power as nothing more than a means to an end. He wants the middle class to pay the price for another huge tax cut that would mostly help him and his country club buddies. Doesn't care if he costs more women their reproductive freedoms because it won't make a difference in his life. Do not boo. Vote. They can't hear your boos, but they can hear your votes. Most of all, Donald Trump wants us to think that this country is hopelessly divided between us and them, between the quote-unquote real Americans who support him and the outsiders who don't. Because having people divided and angry, he figures boosts his chances of being elected. And he doesn't care who gets hurt. I mean, think about it. Just the other day, we learned that on January 6th, a couple years ago, Donald Trump was told that Mike Pence was in the Capitol about 40 feet from an angry mob chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." And his response was, quote, "So what? Don't boo." If Donald Trump does not care that a mob might attack his own vice president, do you think he cares about you? Pennsylvania, we do not need 4 more years of that. We don't need 4 more years of arrogance and bumbling and bluster and division. America's ready to turn the page. We are ready for a better story, one that helps us work together instead of turning against each other. Pennsylvania, we're ready for President Kamala Harris. And the good news is Kamala Harris is ready to do the job. This is a leader who has spent her life fighting on behalf of people who need a voice and a chance. Somebody who was raised in the middle class, who worked a summer job at McDonald's while she earned a degree, who believes in the values that built this country. Somebody who has served with distinction in every office that she has ever held. I think we probably had a fainting spell back there. So let's make space for the emergency folks. This happens sometimes. Everybody bend their knees a little bit. You've been standing for a while. You can dance if you want. I just suggest bending your knees. But she'll be okay. Kamala is as prepared for the job as any nominee for president has ever been. That's who Kamala is. And in the White House, she will have an outstanding partner in Governor Tim Walz. Tim is a veteran, he is a teacher, he's a coach, he's a hunter. He's been a great governor working with Democrats and Republicans to get stuff done. He can also take a vintage truck apart and put it back together again. You think Donald Trump can do that? For that matter, do you think Donald Trump has ever changed a tire in his life? I'm just trying to picture. The point is, if you elect Kamala and Tim, they won't be focused on their problems, they'll be focused on yours. They understand that too many folks here in Pennsylvania and across the country are struggling to pay the bills. Even though wages are steadily growing and inflation is finally slowing, the price of everything, from health care to housing to groceries, it's still too high. And that takes a real bite out of paychecks. It hurts. So the question is, who's really going to do something about it? That's what you should be asking yourself. Now, Donald Trump's plan is to do what he did last time, which was give another massive tax cut to billionaires and big corporations. And then, don't boo, I'm going to break you of this habit. And the reason some people think, well, I don't know, I remember that economy when he first came in being pretty good. Yeah, it was pretty good, because it was my economy. We had had 75 straight months of job growth that I handed over to him. It wasn't something he did. I spent 8 years cleaning up the mess that the Republicans had left me the last time. So just in case everybody has a hazy memory, he didn't do nothing except those big tax cuts. His other big economic plan now is to slap tariffs on everything, from food to TVs. Now, understand what tariffs are. Anything that's coming from that's made elsewhere and comes here, you slap extra money on top of it. And if other countries are cheating, in some cases, it makes sense because you want to have a fair playing field. But what he's proposing is basically a Trump sales tax that could cost the average family almost $4,000 a year. So if you're concerned about higher prices, that is not the way to get lower prices. That's going to come out of your pocket. You think prices are high now? Donald Trump's message basically is, you ain't seen nothing yet. All right, so that's as far as you can tell, that's his plan, right? Because it's not written down anywhere. When it comes to health care, you heard it in the debate. Donald Trump's got one answer. Ending the Affordable Care Act that 45 million people rely on. The other day, his running mate, J.D. Vance, had you gotta vote. The other day, his running mate had the nerve to say, Donald Trump salvaged the Affordable Care Act. I mean, Donald Trump spent his entire presidency trying to tear it down. And by the way, he couldn't even do that right. And now, 8 years after he was elected, when he was asked about what he was going to do, he says he's got concepts of a plan for how he'd replace it. Now, I want you all to think about this for a second. Let's say your boss gives you an assignment, project. He says, I need this on Friday. And Friday comes around and he says, so, did you finish that project I asked for? And he says, well, I actually haven't started, but I have a concept of a plan. Or you could try it at home. Honey, did you do the dishes? I have a concept of a plan to do the dishes. How's that going to go over? If it wouldn't work for you, why in the heck should it work for the President of the United States? But the good news is, Kamala Harris, she doesn't have concepts for a plan. She has an actual plan to make your life better. To bring down the cost of things like groceries. She'll go after corporations that are jacking up prices. Just like she went after big banks and for-profit colleges when she was an attorney general in California. And believe me, when she does, nobody's going to want to stand in her way. I remember after the home mortgage crisis, Kamala pushed me and my administration harder than any other attorney general in the country to make sure homeowners got a fair settlement. It did not matter that she was pushing a Democratic administration. She was not going to let anybody stop her from winning as much relief as possible for the families who deserved it. And because of the work she did, those families got billions more than they would have otherwise got. That's the kind of president Kamala Harris will be. To lower housing costs, Kamala will cut red tape and work with governors like Josh Shapiro, as well as the private sector, to build 3 million new homes. And she'll give first-time home buyers up to $25,000 to help with the down payment. Plans, concrete plans. And for a lot of folks, that could be the difference between watching their dreams pass them by and finally owning a place of their own. To lower health care costs, Kamala already worked with Joe Biden to take on the drug companies and bring down the cost of insulin and hearing aids and more than 50 prescription drugs. And as president, she will never stop working to limit out-of-pocket costs and protect your care. That's who Kamala is. She's got a track record of doing it. And here's a big one. Instead of giving more tax breaks to billionaires and raising prices on working families, Kamala will give a tax cut to 100 million middle class and working people here in America. So, if you're a new parent, you could qualify for a $6,000 tax credit during the first year of your child's life. Because I don't have to tell a lot of you, raising kids is hard. And she wants to make it easier to afford stuff like a crib or a car seat or diapers. I remember buying diapers. I remember the first time I went in the store, right after Malia was born. I was like, what? That's how much diapers cost? I remember changing diapers. You think Donald Trump ever changed a diaper? Yeah. I almost said that, but I decided I shouldn't say it. If you're starting a small business, Kamala Harris will give you a $50,000 tax credit to help you get it off the ground. That's who Kamala Harris is. That's what she stands for. So with Kamala, you've got actual plans. Trump, concepts of a plan. Now, if you challenge Trump to elaborate and enumerate his concepts, he will fall back on one answer. J.D. Vance does the same thing. Doesn't matter what the issue is, housing, health care, education, paying the bills. Their only answer is to blame immigrants. They want you to believe that if you let Donald Trump round up whoever he wants, by the way, and ship them out, all your problems will be solved. Now, we've got real issues at the border. We are a nation of laws and a nation of immigrants. We have to make sure it's fair. There are communities at the border that can be overrun. We've got to actually solve a problem. But when I hear Donald Trump talking, I've got one question. As I recall, Donald Trump was president for 4 years. And if rounding up and deporting millions of desperate people and building the beautiful wall, and didn't matter whether some of those folks you rounded up were women and children, if that's the answer to everything, well, why didn't you solve the problem? Why were the number of immigrants basically the same when you left office as when you took office? I'll tell you why. Because he didn't have a real plan. He had talking points. He had concepts of a plan. And the plan was mean and ugly. And it was designed to enhance his politics and make people angry, not to solve the problem. You know what would actually help bring order to the border and fix our immigration system? The bipartisan deal that Kamala Harris supported, even though it was written by one of the most conservative Republicans in Congress, the same bill that Donald Trump tanked on purpose because he thinks fear-mongering is how he's going to win this election. He told Republicans, even the ones who had originally supported, don't vote for it, because he doesn't want the problem solved. We don't need a president who will make problems worse just to make his own political circumstances better. We need a president who actually cares about solving problems and making your life better, and that's what Kamala Harris will do. And to help her do it, she will need a Senate full of serious public servants, like Bob Casey. I'm going to talk about this man just for a second. I've known Bob for almost 20 years. I've watched his daughters grow up. I know his brothers and cousins, and let me tell you, there are a lot of brothers and cousins. And I can tell you that no one is more humble and more honest and more rooted in his community and has more integrity than Bob Casey. You know, in Washington, folks make a distinction between work horses and show horses. And Bob Casey, he's not a show pony. All the guy cares about is doing the job and looking after you, the people he was elected to serve. That's the kind of person we need to send back to Washington. That's the kind of person who's going to help Kamala get stuff done. Folks who share our values and will do what they can to move this country forward rather than backward. That's who Bob Casey is. One of those values is freedom. And during election time, there are a lot of flags and there's a lot of talk about freedom. So let me talk about that just for a second. Because I don't think we've ever had an election with candidates who understand freedom more differently. For Donald Trump and his cronies, freedom means that the powerful can do whatever they please. Fire workers for trying to organize a union. Dodge paying their fair share of taxes. Try to throw out your votes when they lose an election. Control what women can and can't do with their bodies. In other words, for Trump, freedom is getting away with stuff. It's like he said in the middle of the pandemic. I don't take any responsibility at all. People were dying. I don't take any responsibility at all. Not sure any other president has ever uttered that statement. We have a broader idea of freedom. We believe in the freedom to provide for our families if we're willing to work. The freedom to breathe clean air and drink clean water and send our kids to school without worrying if they come home. We believe that true freedom gives each of us the right to make decisions about our own life, how we worship, who we marry, what our family looks like. And real freedom also means that we're going to disagree on how each of us should live our lives. And we have to respect other people's views on these issues. You know, I've always said there are good people of conscience on both sides of the abortion divide. I respect anyone whose faith tells them that it isn't something they support. But if we believe in freedom, then we should at least agree that such a deeply personal decision should be made by the woman whose body is involved and not by politicians. It has been fascinating to watch Donald Trump just tie himself into a pretzel on this issue. I mean, when he ran for president the first time, he said he would support punishing women who got an abortion. That's what he said. Thank you. Now, well, a couple weeks ago, what did he say? He said, "Don't worry, women, I'll be your protector. I'll tell you how he protected you." He handpicked 3 of the Supreme Court justices who overturned Roe versus Wade. Went out there and bragged about it. And now there are Trump abortion bans in 20 states, many of them with no exception for rape or incest. And when he's asked about it, he says, well, everybody wanted it this way. Really? He thinks women want to have to drive hundreds of miles to find a doctor who can help them? Does he think doctors want to choose between letting a woman die or going to jail for giving her the life-saving care that she needs? That is not something people chose. Now, Donald Trump may be confused about that issue, but let's not be confused. Let's be clear about what's at stake here. If you send Bob Casey back to the Senate, he'll vote to restore reproductive freedom that women had for nearly 50 years. And if Congress passes that bill, Kamala Harris will sign it into law. Because they understand Freedom is about being able to make the right choice for ourselves and our families. It's about recognizing that other people have the freedom to make their own choices, even if they're different from ours. And it's an example of how, at the end of the day, this election isn't just about politics. It's about values. It's about who we are and how we treat each other. And the example we want to set for our children and for their children. And it's about character. You know, some of you know that when I was growing up, I didn't have a father in the house. But I did have plenty of people around me. Stepfather, grandparents, teachers, coaches, most of all my mom, who taught me the difference between right and wrong, who showed me what it meant to have integrity and to be honest and to be responsible and to work hard and to treat other people like we wanted them to treat us. And I had a bunch of role models out there who helped raise me to become a man, and I made mistakes, and sometimes I didn't live up to those values that had been taught the way I should have, and I was checked and I was corrected, and I internalized those values, and I tried to live up to them. And I suspect most of you grew up the same way. And you know, that process of trying to live out your best self, trying to live out your values, that doesn't stop after the age of 20 or 21. It keeps going, and as I got older, I continued to benefit from friends like Bob Casey and Josh Shapiro and others who would reinforce those values and who I didn't want to disappoint. And obviously, my wife. And my daughters, you know, who I want to make sure, Malia and Sasha are watching. I want to make sure that I don't disappoint them, and that I'm passing on these values to them. You know, and here in Pittsburgh, I'm thinking about another example. Somebody who was a dear friend of mine and who's passed away now, Dan Room, who, you know, here was a guy who won 6 Super Bowls, 8 AFC championships, had enormous wealth and power. But I remember walking around, I guess it was Heinz Field by that time. I'm old enough to remember Three Rivers Stadium. Now I know it's something else. But Dan knew the name of every single person in the Steelers organization. You know, we'd pass by a custodian and he'd say, "Hey, Jimmy, how you doing? How's the family?" All the front office staff, he cared about them. He used his influence to get more black and brown head coaches hired in the NFL. He gave back to his community. He was known for his integrity. He helped support the peace process in Northern Ireland, became my ambassador to Ireland, and continued to help encourage people who were so far apart to come together. He had character. That's what I think about so much these days, because it's so different from what we see out of the Republican nominee. And it's been one of the most disturbing aspects of this election season. about Trump's rise in politics is how we seem to have set aside the values that people like Dan stood for and Bob stood for and that I was taught, and those didn't used to be Republican Democratic values. I mean, it used to be we'd have arguments about tax policy or foreign policy, but we didn't have arguments about whether you should tell the truth or not. We didn't make excuses for people who just violated basic norms of treating people fairly and with respect. I mean, just last week, I talked about this. We had one of the deadliest hurricanes in American history. The beautiful town of Asheville, North Carolina, one of my favorite places in the country. Spent time there, amazing people. Devastated. Hundreds of people killed. And President Biden and Vice President Harris were down there meeting with local officials and comforting families, asking how they could help. And Donald Trump at a rally just started making up stories about the Biden administration withholding aid from Republican areas and siphoning off aid to give to undocumented immigrants. Just made the stuff up. Everybody knew it wasn't true. Even local Republicans said it was not true. And now the people of Florida are dealing with another devastating storm. And I want you to watch what happens over the next few days, just like the last time. You're going to have leaders who try to help, and then you have a guy who will just lie about it to score political points, and this has consequences. Because people are afraid, and they've lost everything, and now they're trying to figure out, how do I apply for help? And some of them may be discouraged from getting the help they need. The idea of intentionally trying to deceive people in their most desperate and vulnerable moments. And my question is, when did that become okay? I'm not looking for applause right now. I want to ask Republicans out there, people who are conservative, who didn't vote for me, who didn't agree with me. I had friends who disagreed with me on every issue. When did that become okay? Why would we go along with that? I mean, if your coworkers acted like that, they wouldn't be your coworkers very long. If you're in business and somebody you're doing business with just outright lies and manipulates, you stop doing business with them. Even if you had a family member who acted like that, you might still love them, but you tell them you got a problem. And you wouldn't put them in charge of anything. And yet, when Donald Trump lies or cheats or shows utter disregard for our Constitution, when he calls POWs losers or fellow citizens vermin, people make excuses for it. They think it's okay. They think, well, at least he's owning the libs. He's really sticking it to them. It's okay as long as our side wins. And by the way, I'm sorry, gentlemen, I've noticed this especially with some men who seem to think Trump's behavior, the bullying and the putting people down, is a sign of strength. And I am here to tell you that is not what real strength is. It never has been. Real strength is about working hard and carrying a heavy load without complaining. Real strength is about taking responsibility for your actions and telling the truth even when it's inconvenient. Real strength is about helping people who need it and standing up for those who can't always stand up for themselves. That is what we should want for our daughters and for our sons, and that is what I want to see in a president of the United States of America. And the good news is that you have candidates to vote for in this election that demonstrate that kind of character, who know what real strength looks like, who will set a good example and do the right thing and lead this country better than they found it. So, Pennsylvania, that is the choice in this election. It's not just about policies that are on the ballot. It is about values, and it is about character. So whether this election is making you feel excited or scared or hopeful or frustrated or anything in between, do not just sit back and hope for the best. Get off your couch and vote. Put down your phone and vote. Grab your friends and family and vote. Vote for Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States. Vote for Tim Walz as the next vice president of the United States. Vote for Bob Casey and this whole incredible Pennsylvania Democratic ticket. Help your friends and family members and neighbors and co-workers do the same, because if enough of us make our voices heard, we will leave no doubt about the election outcome. We'll leave no doubt about who we are and what America stands for. And together we'll keep building a country that's more fair and more equal and more just and more free. That is our task. That is our responsibility. Let's go do it. Thank you, Pittsburgh. Thank you, Pennsylvania.